I need to begin with an apology for downplaying the death of an uncle of one of our members and turning it into a mock movie title. I did this not out of disrespect, but to try and attract other members who are not regular attenders, hoping that out of curiosity they'll come along this afternoon to hear what death over Benghazi is all about. A member of the society, Marilyn, asked me how to find out more about the death of her uncle in action during World War II in North Africa. She had quite a lot of detail about him already, but I suggested that she send an email to Devault Nell to get the military records. Now, if you take nothing from this talk except this email address, you've still got a gold mine. As Marilyn doesn't have an email, I said I would get the information for her. So to begin with, let me explain 3 questions. Firstly, what will you get out and how much will it cost? Secondly, how do you get it? And thirdly, how to interpret it. What you will get, usually 2 files, one with a P at the end of it and the other with an S in its title. My guess is that P is personal file and the S stands for service record. The personal file will contain things like attestation form, that's to say when he swears, the serviceman swears to do his duty to protect his land of South Africa. Now, some of the attestation forms, such as this one, has a additional stamp on it with the word anywhere. At the beginning of the war, the South African government agreed that they would only fight in Africa. And as the war continued, they realized that they might have to cross the Mediterranean and enter Italy. And so that stamp of anywhere implies that that particular serviceman with anywhere on his form was willing to fight anywhere in the world. The third sheet that you would find in the personal file is a conduct sheet. It's always quite interesting to see how your ancestor behaved himself while serving in the Union Defence Force. The fourth form might contain information about casualty and hospitalization. This particular slide shows not our Philip Hudson Clarence, but rather his brother, who had a bad heart and was finally medically discharged from the forces. But you can see entries there as he went from hospital and finally got medically boarded. If your survivors survived to the end of the war, if your ancestors survived to the end of the war, then you will get discharge papers. And this one here is of my father-in-law, and you'll see that he is given a discharge demobilization privileges, which include a suit, a suitcase, and £30. Another form you'll mostly find is the medal entitlement form, in this case a letter addressed to the father of Philip Hudson Clarence, Sergeant Clarence, who had written obviously to ask which medals his deceased son was entitled to, and this was the response. Now, the papers in your file, in your personal file, will not be in chronological order. Devault Nell merely scans them for you, and he often scans from the top to the bottom. So the earliest form might be the last one that appears in your PDF file. The service record doesn't leave much room for written information, and so many abbreviations are used. These might be commonly known in the 1940s, but nowadays they're a bit meaningless. On the top is the name and the personal details. Under a list of where the serviceman has served is from date to date, and usually with an authorization code. Once again, this seems absolute gibberish to us today, but I'm sure it meant something important in the time the card was written. In the case of Philip Hudson Clarence, there are in fact 3 cards, and I'm not going to give you and show you each of the cards because I had to basically extract details about that. And a bit later on, I'll be showing you where he served and how long he served and so on. Then the next question is, how much will all of this cost? Well, I got this information from Dewald Nell. He sent it to me, having scanned it from the file in the military archives in Centurion in Pretoria, and he charged me 100 Rand for the personal file and 50 Rand for the service card. That is as of February, March 2025. The next question is, how do you get it? Well, Dewald will send you an email with a link to Dropbox, warning you to download within 7 days. The 2 files will be in PDF format. The 2 files will be in PDF format. And the final question is how to interpret it. This is not Dewald's job. It's your job to do that. He does, however, give you a link to a booklet that you can download. I actually searched for it simply on Google because I'd found it before. And this is what the cover looks like. It's a PDF document. As you can see, it's from the Philatelic Society. So presumably they're looking at military mail, and therefore the abbreviations were quite important to them. And we're very thankful that this file does exist. It doesn't have all the answers, however, so don't expect that. And so we move on now to the specific case study of Philip Hudson Clarence. So let us start looking at the service record of Philip Hudson Clarence. He signed up to join the Air Force on the 22nd of July 1940, and he remained at the CAFTD, which my guess, and according to the book of abbreviations, is the Central Air Force Training Depot, for roughly 7 days. Then on the 30th of July through to the 25th of August, he was at ATC, which I think is Air Force Training Course. Most probably this was basic training. From the 26th of August to the 30th of October, he served at GIS. Now that could mean 2 things, either the Ground Instruction School or the Gunnery Instruction School, because he became a gunner in the Air Force. So I'm not sure which of this is part of basic training, marching and that sort of thing, or whether it was training for his mustering as an air gunner. From the 21st of October 1940 through to the 8th of December of that year, he served in the 64th Air School, 64 AS, 64 Air School at Tempe, where he was taught to be a wireless operator. From the 9th of December to the 9th of March, he was sent to the 41st AS, or the 41st Air School, which was based at Youngsfield, and here he was taught armament training. This is mostly where he learnt about firing guns and on a particular aircraft. From the 10th of March to the 9th of April, once again a month, he was part of the P&O pool. Took a bit of time to work that out, but also had RS behind that heading. I think it stands for Pilot and Observer Pool Reserve Squadron, and this was at the Waterkloof Air Station in Pretoria. On the 10th of April to the 15th of April 1941, he was in the 16th Squadron, and they were busy reforming with their Maryland aircraft to fly as part of the East Africa campaign in Ethiopia. On the 16th of April to the 23rd of April, I'm not sure why he spent a week in the 43rd Squadron in Cape Town. Perhaps he was on leave before going off to war. But he then served from the 23rd of April to the 2nd of June in the 15th Squadron, which was a Coastal Command Squadron, also flying Martin Maryland 167 aircraft. 3rd of June to the 12th of June he embarked aboard the SS Dahlia. That's what it looked like on the card. It could be SS Dahlia. Normally you can find pictures of these ships that were used as troop ships, merchant vessels that were commandeered during the war. But I could find no reference to Dahlias or Dahlias, which fitted at the right time period. So I'm not quite sure whether I've even got the name right from the handwriting on the card. But for that roughly 9 days, headed to East Africa and disembarked at Mombasa in Kenya on the 12th of June 1941. From the 12th of June to the 31st of July, he was with the 21st Squadron. He remained in the squadron right until his death. This particular time period, he was flying in Ethiopia as an air gunner on a Maryland 167 aircraft. From the 1st of August to the 5th of November, the date of his death, they were transferred to the Middle East and served in Egypt and in Libya. I did notice there was a leave period from the 24th of August to the 31st of August. I presume this was just time off in Egypt, etc. He didn't make his way back to South Africa for that leave period. From the 5th of November until the 4th of August in 1942, he was officially listed under the MAFD, which stands for Mobile Air Force Depot. Basically, this was a holding unit for unplaced, or in this case, missing personnel. They weren't sure if he had died after the plane was shot down or whether he was a prisoner of war. And presumably by the 4th of August, his name having not been collected by the Red Cross at the different prisoner of war camps, etc., that he was officially declared dead. Just out of interest, it's fascinating to see that he was listed originally as a acting sergeant, and I can't quite read whether that's 10 and 6 or 12 and 6 or 18 and 6 that he was receiving per day from the 12th of March 1941, but he received an additional 2 and 6 flying pay because he was aboard an aircraft and not just serving on the ground. They also have a WT, which is wireless transmitter and air gunner, but there's no amount of money written in there about how much he was earned. But what I find rather sad is that he ceased to draw flying pay as from the 5th of November, that they sort of so snoop with their money that they have to stop paying an extra 2 and 6 a day just in case he was in a prisoner of war camp. This is a drawing of a Martin Maryland 167. It's a plane built in the States initially, but used quite a lot by the French and the Royal Air Force, as well as the South African Air Force. And in fact, this shows 3 different squadron Marylands. The top one is labeled 16th Squadron, the lower one, the 24th Squadron, and then the one on the left, which serves in the desert. You'll notice that the camouflage paint is slightly different in color. Presumably that's suitable for desert warfare, as is the Maryland Mark II, the 23rd Squadron, 21st Squadron, sorry. The captain was Captain Thackeray, and they were based in Bu Ahmed in Egypt in December 1941. That was a month after Philip Hudson Clarence died. This is a slightly larger version of that plane. And you can see the dorsal gunner, they're referred to as rear gunner, but in this case, as you can see, he's more in the middle of the aircraft. And it is impossible for him to get through to the front where the pilots were. And the observer right in the very front there. It was separated completely, so he had to literally climb into his position, as you can see from this photo on the left, of a gunner himself climbing into the dorsal gunnery turret, and the pilot and the observer climbing into the pilot's turret at the front of the aircraft. This is another picture of the aircraft, perhaps of a Maryland 167, perhaps taken before the war, because there doesn't seem to be any camouflage painting on it at this point. Now, the bombing raid during which Philip Clarence died was from the air base in Libya called Bardia across to Benghazi, which was held by Italian and German troops and air force. And the idea was to bomb the harbour as well as the air force base there. Those are the two arrows you can see. The flight in total was approximately 561 kilometers and 561 back, and in obviously needing some extra fuel to avoid aircraft and come in for their bombing raid and avoid fighter aircraft who might be shooting at them, etc. They had to refuel on the way because there wouldn't have been enough to get there and to get back safely. So, 5th of November 1941, the day in which Philip Hudson Clarence died. What happened on that day? Well, the aircraft Maryland K-1653 was shot down with the loss of its 4 crew members. Now, obviously, I need to find out more about that, and where can I do that? Well, every unit during the war would write up what they called a war diary, what happened that particular day. And this was certainly the case for the 21st Squadron of the South African Air Force. Where can I find that? They mostly find there's a copy of it sitting in the military archives, but there's certainly a copy. I found a copy in the National Archives at Kew, which was rather fortunate. May I suggest you register for that National Archive in Kew, because if you do want to download any of their digitized images, if you are a registered user, you won't have to pay, but if you're not registered, you'll have to pay for it. But it is the National Archives Kew, and if you go to their Discovery, you can explore their catalogue. And here you can see I entered 21st Squadron, SAAF, and I asked between the dates of 1939 and 1942, because I wanted to find 1941 and might be in a war diary which was covered in that period. And in fact, this is what came up. Squadron, as you can see at the top, Squadron number 21, South African Air Force. And it says that it is the operational record books. And it's numbered 27/272 is the reference number. And so I duly downloaded that record. This is the page of the 5th of November's operation. As you can see, their microfilming is not very clear. So, in fact, I managed to blow it up as much as I could and then transcribe it. So let me now tell you about what it says. The 21st Squadron of the South African Air Force Operational Report number 22, copy number 6. Date of operation 5th of November. Type of aircraft 6 Marylands. Benghazi, high-level bombing, stores, harbour and ships. Northwest corner, the Burqa Airdrome. After refueling at landing ground 75, 6 Marylands set out for Benghazi. The route followed was somewhat south of the usual one. The coast was crossed 50 miles south of the harbour. On approach, owing to a thick cloud cover, it was necessary to come down to 15,000 feet. In spite of intense anti-aircraft, the presence of enemy fighters and iced-up windows, a perfect run-up was made. Basically, every bomb fell on the target site. And the apparent results included 2 large explosions and 2 fires. After studying the photos in relation to the information supplied, there can be little doubt that very great damage must have been inflicted. Immediately on leaving the target, two CR-42Gs attacked. These two fighters, flying wide of the formation, had been in attendance since the Marylands first crossed the sea. A running fight ensued for about 15 minutes, the enemy being reinforced by another CR-42 and three Messerschmitt's M09As. The various types of attacks were delivered, but the favorite was from the beam and dead astern. This tactic appeared to be for one or two 42Cs to draw fire from the rear gunner, and then for the 109 to make a quick beam or attack quarter. Repeat attacks were made over a period of some 6 or 7 minutes. The gunners all gave a good account of themselves, and all three 42s were seen to be hit repeatedly. One, which presented a non-deflection shot, was undoubtedly shot down, probably that another was sent spinning down, but with other attacks developing, continuous observation was impossible. Scare guns were used to good effect, and all the pilots got flashing bursts with their front armament. One gunner reports seeing a blazing aircraft on the ground when some distance away. During this scrap, one of our Marylands fell away and was seen to be on fire, port engine and rear gunner cockpit. It went down apparently under control in an easy glide. Two black objects were seen to leave, but no parachutes were observed. The other 5 Marylands were all hit by anti-aircraft and or bullets and cannon shells. 4 returned to their base, and the 5th, more seriously damaged, landed at landing ground 75. Anti-aircraft, it states on this operational report, very heavy over target area. It then gives the timing of the operation: airborne at 07:55 hours, landed at landing ground 75 at 09:35, airborne again at 11:40. Time over the target was at 14:10, and then back home, landing ground 21 at 16:40. In the appendix, they list all the crew and the planes that were involved in this operation. The one that we are interested in, as you can see, is K1653 in the third column, and the second in the middle of that third column. The pilot was Second Lieutenant Blake, and Second Lieutenant Mankies was the observer. The wireless operator gunner was Sergeant Clarence, and the gunner was Sergeant Brunt. I then went and found another Squadron 21 of the South African Air Force, this time also described as operational records books, but it had the number 27/267. So I downloaded this one as well. And this, in fact, was the war diary, and it's even headed Oorlogsdagboek, or War Diary of the 21st Squadron. And here it is written up. As you can see where the arrow is, it says 5th of November. Let me start reading this to you. If I mistake not, this is Fireworks Day way back in civilization. It was indeed fireworks which the enemy received over Burqa aerodrome near Benghazi. What? That place again? It was indeed a split-arse show led by Major Roddy Stewart and his 6 Marylands. Practically every bomb was registered in the target area, and extensive damage was done to the dispersal aircrafts, building, hangars, and landing grounds. I decided that split-arse needed to be researched a bit. In fact, split-arse is RAF slang speaking of a pilot reckless giving to performing stunts, having good maneuverability. So I leave the rest to your imagination what this particular writer meant when he described the whole operation as being split-arse. However, let's just move to the paragraph where the aircraft crashed. Unfortunately, we have lost Spitch Blake and his crew. His Maryland was seen on fire with the rear gunner's cockpit well ablaze. Snitch and his observer, Frank Meintjes, were very popular figures in the officers' mess, and both Clarence and Brunt, the two gunnery sergeants, were the very best. Brunt was but 18 years of age, and Clarence was also very young. In fact, he was 26, and one of our best WT operators. All four were gone from our midst, but we shall remember them. This loss was a hard blow, coming after the earlier loss of Sugarlow and his crew, and Molly Lamont and his crew. But we have given as good as we have received, and our Marylands, as they ride the skies with the roar of their twin wasps mingling with the whistling air, the volume of sound is the prelude to devastating blows being struck with monotonous regularity at the war machine of the enemy. The Springboks are doing their stuff. Luckily for us in South Africa, we have a thing called a death notice, and as these servicemen all had wills, and similarly also had money coming to them for the pay up to the moment in which they died. Estate files had to be opened up for them. And usually, in the case of Philip Hudson Clarence, however, no death notice was written up. And only in his file do we find the certificate of death on service with the Union Defence Force. Which was filled in officially by the Union of South Africa Defence Headquarters. Also in that file is a will. In the event of my death, I give the whole of my property and effects to my fiancée, Miss Cynthia Hedged, care of Mrs. J.W. Jaggers Company, Cape Town. J.W. Jaggers was a wholesaler in Cape Town, and Mr. Clarence, who was an indent clerk, perhaps he worked at that same site and therefore was engaged to one of the ladies who worked there. I've tried to research Cynthia Hedge to see if she got married. I'm not sure if the spelling Hegde as on the will, or is her surname really Hedge or Hector? One doesn't know quite exactly. And I couldn't find any reference to either of those names with a lady called Cynthia. The other site to which you can find War Dead, of course, is on the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. Unfortunately, because the body of Sergeant Clarence was never found, therefore his name only appears on a memorial plaque at the El Alamein War Cemetery, and it can be seen where the blue arrow is pointing on this slide. What I found quite interesting is in that operational war book, there's in fact a newsletter from the squadron, obviously distributed to its members, and it is filed away in that operational or war book diary. And it's quite amusing to see the top heading there. The guardian angel is our CO. The big chief is the adjutant. The general damager is Yapi. I'd love to know who Yapi was. Maybe he's Van der Merwe of that sort of era. The verse major is Mozak. Not quite sure who he is. The artful editor goes by the name of Cor Blimey. And the proofreader, called the spoof reader, is Van Harley. And you'll notice at the top of 21 is the name of the newsletter, or is it OK21? And the top it says published weekly, WEAKLY. And this is from October the 5th, 1941, literally a month before Philip Hudson Clarence died.